Welcome to the Figma for EDU monthly workshop. My name is Miggy. I'm a designer advocate for education here at Figma, and today we're going to be talking about making vector icons in Figma. We're going to begin by answering the question, what are vectors? Vectors are infinitely large, infinitely small, not infinitely small, I guess that would be impossible, but they are math-based graphics that use points and curves to articulate and visualize that math. So then that way it can scale across mediums. So when you're thinking about user interface design, we're looking at this design here in Figma. If I increase the scale of my design, by increasing the scale of my design, I'm increasing the visuals here. Figma is inherently vector. The lines that you see, the text that you see, this way the interfaces that you create can be visually understood and can scale and be responsive in many different ways. You'll notice all the icons here. They have all been designed in Figma and are vector based. The reason that we're talking about icons, there's a lot of AI out there. The AI can help you. The AI can do a lot of things for you, but sometimes the devil's in the details, and those details can be the way that you visually create the language of your apps and websites. So knowing how to get into that nitty gritty to be able to control and manipulate those finer details is what's going to set you apart from other folks. So not just using stock visuals, but being able and emboldened to create your own graphics. Here, these are just some icon sets that are like in the Figma library. These down here are some icons that I'm currently working on and a set that I'm building for an app that I'm working on. So I'm making a screen recording app, and you can see that there's a lot of iconography to help visually communicate what folks are meant to do. So you want to create affordances, you want to allow folks to understand an app and be able to navigate it in a very effective way. Here too, I have a link to material, designs, symbol, icon library. Many different places are going to have a lot of icons that are available. You can learn from them. Some of these can be reused. You can use them for building out your own apps, but eventually, as you want to polish up your designs, as you build out your own designs, you are going to want something that may be a little bit more iconic. You want to stand out. This right here is a screenshot from SF Symbols. So this is Apple's icon library that is part of their SF Pro collections. Whenever you see Apple's interface, a lot of the icons are being derived from this library. I just wanted to give you that visual reference point that, yes, being able to craft at this level is still going to be a much sought after skill. So right here, is it possible to design our UI from Figma Make? Figma Make will generate a UI, and then you'll be able to bring that into Figma Design. And then stuff that you build in Figma Design, you can then use as context to prompt in other places. We will be talking about how to use your designs as context. So all of these designs are scalable vector graphics that I'm then able to bring into the development process, whether I'm manually developing things or I am developing things using AI agents and assistants. The first thing that we're going to be talking about today in Figma is the pen tool. So the pen tool down here, when you are in the Figma file, it's going to be the shortcut P. This is going to be one of the most traditional ways to create vector graphics. When I click on that pen tool, I can begin to draw lines and shapes from point to point. I'm zoomed out here, but the closer I zoom in, you can see that as I'm drawing those points, I'm just clicking. I'm able to then join them together. So this is going to be the rough shaping of those graphics. And as I mentioned, they're node-based, they're math-based. So when I select that point, I look over here on the right-hand side, and I will actually see their X position and their Y position. So all of the properties for every one of these points that you generate, it's effectively generating that there. And you'll notice that as I begin to move those points around, you can see that in Figma, it understands you may want to align them, you want to arrange them, you may want to make sense of them in a way to more easily shape what it is that you're trying to do. It's all about intent. Here, the pen tool, right now, I can draw these out. If I double click on this line, you can see the paths that are used to generate this. Now, over here on the right, this is a representation of using the Bezier handles to create curves on those lines. Now, the secret is that you can go back and forth between those handles fairly easily in Figma. If I come to this pen tool right here, I'm going to hold down the command keys. Once again, if you are just getting into this file, you can head on over to this pen tool frame. You can double click inside of that graphic. You will see these little blue points. Now, when I click on one of those points, I can see the properties for those points. Down here too, you will see additional tools that are available that will help you in editing this as well. I'm going to hold down the command key. That's going to be the control key on Windows. When I do, you're going to notice that it's highlighting the bend tool. And when I hover over that point, I could just click and it's going to release those handles. So here I can click, it's going to release those handles. Now, if I hold down that command key and click again, it's then going to turn it back into a solid and organic shape. You may notice that I have this middle point here. It's bothering me. I don't want that extraneous point to be there. I can select it and press delete. So delete key and it's gone, but then I lose those points. What you want to do is hold shift delete and then it's gone entirely. So I'll show you that one more time. If I click in between those points, you'll notice that Figma is intuitively placing an additional point on those halfway markers. Here, as I zoom in, I can create additional points, and Figma is always going to find that halfway point. Now, if I want to delete those extraneous points, I can click, select, you can see that they're highlighted. I'm going to hold down the shift key. I'm going to press delete. Click, shift, select, hold down the shift key, delete. Click, select, hold down the shift key, delete. And those are gone. I have an extra one here. Shift, delete. Now, once again, I have these 2 points. Let's say I want to release them and use the Bezier handles. I can command click on it and command click on it. Now, Figma has a nice little algorithm that's attempting to make a nice organic shape of that. When you're working with the Bezier handles, you may notice something. You see that the line matches up. Over here, there's 3 different options. Not that many people really dig into this level of depth, but here I can choose to have those handles mirror. I could have them also mirror the angle and the length. And the reason that you want them to mirror is because you want to create that nice curve. If you break that mirroring by clicking there, then you're going to have an edge. And more often than not, you don't want an edge. You want a nice driven curve. So if I just command click on it twice, it's always going to give me a nicer curve that's assuming what it is that I want to do. You don't like these right there, so I can just command click on it again, command click on it again, and there you go. You got a nicer curve. Now, a couple things to think about. You're going to have outline modes, you're going to have fill modes. And what I mean by that is when we begin to draw out your paths. So if I was to press the pen tool right here, the P key, I'm going to hold the shift key while I'm clicking to create nice even lines, holding the shift key, holding the shift key, holding the shift key. Let's increase the weight on the stroke. Over here in the right-hand properties panel, we can see that all there. When I double click, I'm outside of it. I'm just treating this as an object. When I double click, I'm inside of it. And when I select it, I can edit the properties. So right here, we have a much bigger fill. And so here I could even like adjust those points as necessary. But what I want to draw your attention to is when you look at position, you could choose to have the fill on the inside as long as you have a closed shape. You can have it on the outside or you can have it in the center. Now, depending on how you're building out your icons, understanding the value of where the line is actually being placed is really important. Developing the ability to know when to have it on the inside, when to have it on the outside. And we're going to get into some of those in just a little bit. Now, if you want, you can add a fill right here by clicking the plus, it'll add a fill. However, if you just want to go from having an outline to having a fill, The shortcut key for that is Shift X. So Shift X will swap the fill and the stroke. Shift X right there, Shift X. This is very similar to other applications. So Shift X can swap the fill and stroke. So I see y'all are talking about shortcuts in the chat. The ultimate shortcut key that you want to know is going to be Command K. Command K is going to bring up this search to action command. So I could type in the word keyboard shortcuts. So hit Command K, Control K if you're on Windows, and type in keyboard shortcuts. It's going to bring up this panel down here. And as you navigate it, this is actually the way that I learned Figma when I first got started, was coming down here and seeing what the functions were as I navigated around. And this is how I was able to find many of those shortcuts. You could see here, remove fill. For me, it's going to be Option / outline stroke, flatten, swap, fill, and stroke. That's the one we were just covering right there. That is going to be Shift and X. Paint bucket tool is Shift B. Bend tool, the Command key or Control key when you have that pen tool selected. So this will adapt as you are working. That's going to cause me to come over here and show you these 3 shortcuts. These are fantastic shortcuts that are going to support your path drawing workflow. Join selection is Command J. Smooth join selection is Shift Command J. On Windows, it'll be Control. And delete and heal selection, we already talked about. Let's talk about join and smooth join. And what that means is, as you are working, I'm going to hit my pen tool. Boom, boom, boom. I'm going to click those points. Let's create more of the weight. And I'm going to create some additional points there. And so here, I'm going to hit the Command key, and we're going to make that more organic. Command key, Command key, Command key. Now I can select and I can move these points. You'll see this little transform box. The transform box, actually relatively new in Figma. It's going to allow you to easily rotate that when you're in this mode. Now, what we want to cover is join selection. So you may be at a point where you have 2 of these endpoints and you want to join them. If I press Command J, it's going to draw a straight line right through. That may not actually be what we want. So I'm just going to move this over. And so I'll show you that a little bit better. Command J draws a straight line. But if I do Command Shift J, it's going to try to complete that Bezier handle all the way through. So I can show it to you again. Let's double click in here. Going to rotate that and select that point. Hold down the Shift key, select that point, Command or Control Shift J. There you go. Once again, that keyboard shortcuts pane isn't a pain at all. Like, I mean, it's quite helpful. So Command K, Control K if you're on Windows, type in keyboard shortcuts. I guarantee you will find a lot of support in this little panel. So just want to highlight that. Next up, we're going to talk about the Bezier handles once again. So here, if I command click, I can release them. Now, when you're working with Bezier handles, there's actually a workflow that is called the clock method. I may get to that in just a little bit. And what that is going to provide is just a way of thinking about releasing your handles so then that way they can be more predictable and more uniform when you're creating your graphics. For now, I just want you to think about releasing them with the command tool and renormalizing them by clicking them again. And I'll show you one other fun little example. If I was to press the R key is the rectangle tool. I could draw a rectangle. Now, when I double click inside that rectangle, I can hold the command key and I can click on each one of those points and it's going to create a perfect circle. So if I command key on it again, it's going to return it back to a square. So using that command key method is going to be a great way to get better control over your points. So like, let's say your handles are wild and crazy and you don't quite know what you're doing. You could always start back from those angles. Another way to think about them is to also use corner radii. So here, when I select, I'm going to delete that one, grab this one over here. I'm going to copy it, Command C, and paste it and move it over. There's other ways to copy and paste. I could also just select it, press Command D or Control D. That'll duplicate it. Or I can select it, hold down the Option key, the Alt key if you're on Windows, and drag a copy. You're going to realize pretty quickly as you get more comfortable, there's always going to be 20 different ways of doing the same thing. I usually like to try to find all 20 of them because sometimes they're going to become really helpful. Anyways, what we wanted to cover at this point is the corner radius. So when I select any given point in here, I can come over to the properties panel and I can draw in a corner radius. So what that's going to do, it's going to treat that edge like the radii of a circle from that circular point. This is going to allow you to create more organic shapes with a bit more control that are effectively non-destructive. So here you're going to see that when I select that point, it's still being rendered as a nice solid corner. However, as I'm working with it, I'm able to define it and shape it and have a lot more control. So when you're building out icons, you're more likely going to want that degree of control. You're going to want that degree of what I refer to as non-destructive editing, because I'm not actually destroying those curves. I'm just selecting that edge and applying a corner radius to generate that shape. Last thing I wanted to talk about in this section is vector networks. Figma is unique in the way that you can create vector networks. So if you've been following along in the file, but you actually want to try something out, this is going to be one that I suggest that you try out. It's a lot of fun. It requires maybe a bit of dexterity, so I'll go through it in a little bit more detail. What we're going to do is we're going to press the P key. That's the pen tool. This is the pen tool. I'm going to click, and then I'm going to hold the Shift key, holding the Shift key. There we go. When I hold the Shift key, you're going to notice that it snaps to various angles. Now I'm going to draw this out all the way over here and click, and you're going to notice that the pen tool is still selected. So I'm going to hold the Shift key once again, and you're going to notice those angles. I'm going to bring this out over here, and then I'm going to click. We've created the bottom half of the arrow. Now you're going to notice that the pen tool is still sticking. And I'm going to press the escape key, and then I'm going to click on this point again, and I'm going to hold the Shift key. I'm going to draw out the other edge. Now, I just got a fantastic question in the chat that I'm going to answer right now. Let's press escape. And the question is, does the corner radius work for edges with 3 joined points? So here we go. We have an edge that has 3 joined points, and I apply a corner radius and it's not working. So you may be thinking there's plenty of icons that I want to draw. Like I want to make this arrow have a nice rounded edge at that point. I'll show you how to do that. So what you want to do is you want to select that point. Corner radius isn't the answer here. You want to come down here to the stroke panel. You're going to pull up stroke settings, and you're going to come to the join. The join has different options. So I can choose a mitered edge, or I can choose a rounded edge. And now you're going to have the rounded edge that you are looking for. So if I was looking to style this arrow maybe to be a bit more rounded, I can also select all of those points right there and come over to the stroke properties panel and change those all to a round endpoints. Now, unlike other tools, Figma allows you to set those individually. So I can select just this point there, make that round. I can select just that point there, make that one round, or I could select this point here and make that one round. So as I begin to move, you can see that they're now all rounded edges. That join that has multiple lines going to it, this is a vector network. I can actually draw in another point to it, and it's still going to maintain that nice rounded edge right there. Let's hit undo, and there we go. So what we're going to do is, using some of these concepts, I wanted to walk you through the building of some very simple icons. The concept that I want to bring across right now is that icons usually have a simpler way of being built than you might think. So if you look at something like this, that's like a location services icon, you may already be thinking, well, I have to draw the point from there to there to there to there to there. Maybe it's a lot of work that's going to be involved. However, oftentimes designing icons, you have to look at things a little bit differently, and I'm going to show you how. I'm going to begin by pressing the R key. The R key is the rectangle tool. The rectangle tool can be found down here. I'm going to draw a rectangle just like that. And now I want to make it look like the location services icon. I'm going to double click so we're editing the points of that rectangle. I'm going to select this edge in the lower left-hand corner, and I'm just going to drag it up and hold the shift key. So there you go. I just made the location services icon. Now we want to round those edges. I just select it right here, and we can apply the corner radius. Now I can come over here and select that fill to be black. So if you blinked, you already missed it. I'll show you that one more time. I'm going to press the R key. I'm going to draw a rectangle. I'm going to double click inside. I'm editing these main points. I'm going to click this little point right here. I'm going to hold the shift key, and you're even going to see that line shows me that it's properly being snapped. Now, if we were using a grid, we can have a much better sense of where we want this to land. For now, we're just free-forming it. I just drew it there, and there we go. Now, what I can do from this point too, let's say I'm working on the outline version of this icon. I can press Shift X. That will swap the fill and the stroke. I can come down here, increase the weight of it. And once again, we're talking again about how thinking of the inside, the center, or the outside position matters greatly. We're going to choose that center position. We're going to notice that our edges here might not be exactly what we want them to be. But once again, go into stroke settings, we apply those rounded corners, and we can make that a little bit thicker. And then we have another variation of our icon. All right, infinity symbol. This is a symbol that I thought long and hard about building, and I came up with a great way to make this. So the infinity symbol is a lot simpler than you think. I'm going to begin by pressing the R key and drawing a rectangle. I'm going to swap the fill and the stroke for this rectangle. So you're going to notice that I'm repeating the shortcuts that are very important. Shift X, swap fill and stroke. We're going to make that stroke black, and we're going to increase the weight of it. We're going to choose that position to be in the center. So what we've done is we basically drew out the rectangle, we outlined it, and next, what we're going to do is we're going to choose the corner radius. You'll notice these little dots on the edges here. We're going to pull that corner radius all the way to the center. The reason we're doing it this way is I like for it to look like a bit of a magic trick. And that corner radius, as we mentioned before, it's just a value over here on the right. And now that we've done that, what we're going to do is we're going to take these 2 points and flip them. So I'm going to select them and then press Shift V. And now we have an infinity symbol. There we go. So let me undo that, Command Z. And so once again, Shift V, that's flip vertical. So we've flipped that vertical, and now we have our infinity symbol right there. So oftentimes these icons, they look much harder than they actually are. Heart, this heart right here, heart really is just, you know, if I deconstruct this heart for you, you're going to see that really it's just an edge. That's all it is. So let's go ahead and make it. I'm going to press the P key. I'm going to hold down the Shift key. That's going to keep that angle. And then when I bring it back up here, you're going to see those 2 points line up. We can move this over here to the center. One thing that I haven't talked about yet, when you're working inside of a frame, you have the ability to position, you know, your objects, like we could center them there. It's centered. Now I can double click, I can select those 2 points. We're going to come over here to the endpoint, and we're going to choose round. You might notice it's starting to look heart-shaped, but it's not quite there. So here we can just increase the weight of the heart until we get that heart icon. So yes, we are going to be recording this for later. Now, what I like to do sometimes is I would like to go in here, I'll hold down the Command key, and I'll draw a handle down while holding Shift to give this heart a little bit more of a, you know, like a little bit more of a, like a style. I could bring this down. And so, you know, these are like little tears. There we go. I got a little heart. And then I can move that right about there. So then you can begin to style that heart in many different ways. So I actually learned this through, there's this guy used to do vector speed runs on the internet, and I learned this from that guy and have since began to work on my own approach. Now, one thing we could do here, notice I'm pressing the shift key to select and deselect points. I can select handles and have them move together at the same time. So there's a lot of things that you can do when you really start to dig in and play around with the tools. So this lightning bolt here, this is another easy one. I'm going to press the R key. I'm going to draw a little tall rectangle. Let's change that fill to be black. I'm going to double click. I'm going to select that point right there. And I'm going to use the delete and heal that we used earlier. Shift delete, and we got ourselves, a little triangle. And then I'm just going to hold down the Option key to duplicate it, or the Alt key if you're on Windows. So Alt key, Option key, duplicate it. And then I'm just going to hit Shift V to flip it vertically, and Shift H to flip it horizontally. And then, you got the lightning icon. And we're going to be talking about bringing these together and constructing them to be more useful as icons in Figma as we move forward. Okay, so next two concepts we're going to talk about are shape primitives and Boolean operations. All of the shapes live down here. I've covered this in many of my workshops before. The shapes themselves, when you draw them, they have these non-destructive properties that allow you to edit them in special ways. So rectangles will give you this corner radius. So rectangles and squares can also be, circles, and it gives you a lot of malleability when editing them. It allows you to have a little bit more fun control. Circles have this arc tool that allow you to break it out and make like little macaroni shells or pie charts. So these circles are really helpful. All of these properties are editable over in the properties panel as well. Over here, we have the triangle or the polygon tool, which allows you to add additional edges as well as round out those corners. So many of these shapes would be very difficult to create on your own. One thing that I'll highlight, you get this extra space in there because it is geometrically centering according to the physics weight of that shape. The reason the triangle has that bounding box is that the center of these is always there. So if I was to draw out a circle and put this triangle in there, the purpose of that box is to help you center it. Here, when I select the two, that's going to allow this triangle to be centered into that circle. Otherwise, if I were to flatten that triangle and I was to attempt to center it, it's going to be off to the left. And nobody wants that. Nobody wants this. So that's what happens when you center to the bounds. This is what happens when it is properly centered to its physics center. Some people mistakenly call this optical adjustment. It's not an optical adjustment. It's actually a math-based adjustment. That's the physics center of all of these shapes as you generate them out. So Figma is pretty smart. It's like Figma physics. Next up are Boolean operations. Boolean operations are when you take multiple shapes and you create something from them. So over here, if I select these two, you'll see Boolean operations are over here in the top right-hand side. It's a non-destructive operation that will create a group of your objects that will allow them to behave in a certain way. So when I union these, they make them as a single object. When I apply a corner radius, it's going to apply to that singular object. You'll notice over here in the properties panel, you can go inside and still move that around. You use Boolean operations like crazy when you're making icons. I'm going to show you two examples. Here, this is going to be subtract, is when you take away one from the other. If I hold down the command key, I can still select the non-destructive one and still cut away from it. These two, the intersect, it's going to find the object in between, right? And keep that there. Once again, the intersect is just a group and it has the two pieces on the inside. So if I was to ungroup this, I get back my shapes. So select them, come over here, intersect, non-destructive operation. They're still there. I can select the object on the inside and control how it's made. And then exclude will basically exclude the area that's in between the middle. So right there. And then as I move the objects around, whatever is in the middle is effectively transparent. And I'm going to walk you through some ways to use Boolean operations when building your icons. How y'all doing? Could never get what I wanted out of these overlapping functions. Well, now you will. So we're going to begin by making an eye icon. And we're talking about being iconic. So an eye icon, an iconic eye icon is what we're going to build. So I'm going to press the F key. I'm going to draw out a frame. We're going to give this frame a name. We're going to call it icon. And the icon is made purely of circles. It looks organic, it looks hard, like all those shapes. You'd be there with Bezier curves till the night's end, maybe a week later. But all you need to do, I'm going to press the O key. The O key is the circle tool. I'm going to draw a circle up here in the top. Now, you may realize I'm balling these measurements when we start getting into making icons that are going to be repurposed and reused. You're going to want to pay very close attention to the dimensions that you're using. Right now, we're still learning, so it's okay to play around a bit. I'm going to draw that first circle. I'm going to hold down the Option key. Notice what happens to my cursor. It changes. I get the little double cursor. We're going to bring this down. I'm going to hold down the Shift key to bring that down. Now, if you notice, when we overlap those two circles, we start to get the shape that we are looking for. Excuse me for one moment while I have a sip of water. There we go. Ooh, who's calling who a polygonist? All right, so we're going to select those two shapes right there. And we are going to use that as the intersect because we want the shape that's in between the two. And once again, this is a non-destructive operation, so I could still move that one circle up or down to adjust the shape. But now that we have it, look at the bounding box fits right to it, even though those two ellipses are on the inside. I can hold down the Shift and the Option key, the Shift and the Alt key to make that just a little bit bigger. We're going to draw another circle to be the inside of there. And notice as I draw it around, Figma's snapping it. It's telling me that this is centered, that it's in that position. So I'm confident in what I'm doing. Let's make this a different color. Let's make it, like red or something that we can see. And what we plan on doing is cutting this one away from the one beneath it. We're going to select them both now. We're going to come over here. We're going to go to subtract, because we want to subtract the front from the back. And there we go. So now we've cut it away from the other one. So let's continue to build this out a little bit further. I'm going to press the O key. I'm going to draw in, I think it's the iris, the pupil. Yeah, the pupil. There we go. We got a pupil. Y'all are being very excellent pupils, by the way. I can select this, hold down the Option key, move this up and over. And now we can subtract from this one. So we're going to select those two and subtract. So we have a pretty good looking eye. The problem is we still have two separate objects. It's not a single icon. What we want to do is make it into one singular object. I'm going to do that by selecting them. And now we're going to use the union Boolean operation. That union Boolean operation is now going to make it behave as if it's one object. So if we look at our layers panel on the left-hand side, we have union, subtract, subtract. And we can apply a fill of black. And even with this union object, we can go ahead and apply a corner radius that can round out those edges. So this can be for or against us. So what I can actually do is I could still go ahead and make edits. You see how this isn't quite looking the way that I want. I can command click, control click if you're on Windows to deep select that object, and I can move it. I can make it smaller, and I can start to get the actual shape that I want out of it. And that's looking great. Now, this whole object, right, this union, I can double click and just name it over here on the right as icon. And we could change that fill to be whatever we want. It could be a red fill. It could be, a black fill. We could even press Shift X to swap the fill in the stroke and get an outline version of that. And so there is a little bit more to creating good outline versions of icons, but I believe that this is a good first step for you to begin to see how you can begin to manipulate and modify those. Now we're about running short on like a lot of time, so I'm going to move on. Unless, do y'all want me to do the microphone? Would y'all like to see? Yeah, see, we're going to do dev practices. We're going to do dev handoff right over here. I promise we're going to get there. Do y'all want me to do a microphone, or do you want me to move on to the next session? Let's see. Next person gets it. Next person in the chat. Microphone? Mike. Okay. Mike, next. All right, we're going to do the mic super fast, and then we're going to move on to next. I'm going to press draw up the frame. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to press the R key. I'm going to draw out a rectangle. Here, I'm going to use the rounded corners. So rounded corners right there. We're going to draw that there. Next, I'm going to press the O key. I'm going to draw a circle. So the circle, I want to use the arc tool to bring this all the way down. I'm going to pull the ratio from the center all the way out as well. And I want to swap this from fill to stroke. And you might ask why. It's actually a nice tip with the circles and the arc tool to get a really good, nice edge. So here we go. We can actually put it as the center. We can take those endpoints. We did endpoints before. We can make those round. We can bring this up. So let's say I can bring this circle down and start to match it to get it exactly how I want it to be. And then so here on out, so we have this shape. Now there's a couple different things that we could do here to generate the bottom portion of this. I'm going to show you a different way that I haven't really done before. It's a polygon. So I'm going to create a triangle. And now this triangle, I'm going to double click and I'm going to create a line from the top to the bottom. So what we're going to do is we're going to press Shift X to go from, fill to stroke. We're going to have it be in the center. And then I'm just going to draw a path using the pen tool from there to there, and then just delete those other lines. Just going to delete those lines. Just makes our lives a little bit easier. That way we don't have to draw it out entirely with the pen tool. Then we want to match this stroke weight. Let's set the stroke weight to 32. I'm going to set this one to 32. That's looking pretty good. Let's say if I want to round out those corners, come over here to the endpoints and we can round them. We can select this entire thing. Now, the point of this one is that we have a fill and we have some strokes. I can select them all, come over here, make them a union object, and we now see the nice path around it. When I press Command Y or Shift Command O, we're going to see the outline of that, and you're going to see that we created a nice, clear, crisp outlined graphic that we can now set to black. And if I press Shift X, it will swap the fills for strokes. So I can have a stroke version of this, or Shift X, a fill version of it, just like that. All right, next section. So I mentioned outline mode. Outline mode is, if you come over here to the right, you're going to see outlines. You're going to see some options for including hidden layers and including object bounds. When you show outlines, you can select all the little inside bits. So I can see the part that I cut away from here. So here, I'm cutting away from that shape. In outline mode, it better supports you as you're working on your graphics. So I can still see the outline of that shape and more easily select it. The next thing I wanted to just mention is snap settings, Command K. I'm going to type in the word snap. And so the options here are snap to pixel grid, snap to geometry, snap to objects. There's going to be times, and I've seen this online, where people are like, I can only snap this point to a very specific edge. So if we zoom in very small, and I begin to draw a path, let's make this path much smaller. There we go. And I begin to draw this path, it's going to like limit me where I can place it. However, if I turn off my snap settings, it's going to be more free form and I can place it to sub pixel points. So there's going to be a time and a place where this is going to be super helpful as you're working. So just wanted to be mindful of that. For the most part, as I'm working, I have snap to pixel grid on, and I'll show you one other setting that's going to actually help you a ton as you start to make smaller icons. So let's delete that frame right there. So outlining, flattening, this is just something I wanted to highlight. So you'll notice that this is, a line. We can go ahead, and if I wanted to, I can make a union object out of this. So let's select those two. I'm just going to put a circle there to show you. It's going to make this into a union object. So I can swap the outline for it. And so here at this point, let's say I want to outline everything. So this then becomes a shape. You can right click and choose outline stroke, or you can flatten it with the boolean operations right here, flatten. So flatten is going to give it those points, and then outline stroke is then going to actually draw out those points. So it's no longer a stroke, but a fill. So here you're going to actually see those generated points. So there's going to be a time and a place where you're going to want to expand your graphics or outline them or flatten them. And that's when they're no longer going to maintain their Boolean objects, are no longer going to maintain their corner radii. They're no longer going to maintain any of the other non-destructive variables for that. Outlining and flattening. So that's the wrong one. It's going to be outline stroke. That's actually what I wanted to show right here. So there we go. Outline stroke. Let's round out some corners. And there we go. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's not going to be in your file, but y'all can follow along. All right. Guides in grid. As you start to develop the icons that you're building, and I'm going to grab some very, very small ones over here to show you what I'm thinking and how it is that I may be building these. Oftentimes, you're building icons at a very small size. So when I draw a frame, I'm going to press the F key. I'm going to hold down the Shift key as I draw it. I'm going to come over here and change the width and the height of this frame to be 24 by 24. When I come down here, I can create a layout guide, and I'm going to increase it for those of you in the back that can't see. This grid will allow me to set points. So I could set every 2 pixels, it'll show me, or let's say every 4 pixels. So I have a sense of how I'm building out this icon. Other things that you can do, when you press Shift R for rulers, you can go in and begin to draw guides that don't show up in the final rendering of your work. So if I want to make a distinction between my grid and the guides, I can make this grid like a blue. Let's make it blue. There we go. It's blue. And I could have guides that are red. Now, these guides are going to help you out with consistency as you're building out your graphics. So here, I think these icons are actually a little bit bigger than that. But here, you're going to see that as I'm building out an icon such as this, I might be starting with a rectangle. I'm going to press Shift X. I'm going to have my stroke. Here, you're going to see exactly how that stroke is going to land within your grid. So as you begin building it out, I can draw with rectangles. Drawing with rectangles is going to make my life a little bit easier. And I can begin to see and figure out where this icon might sit. So here I could see this line that's straight down the middle, and I can better even things up. So then I can even come in here and I might say, hey, I'm going to round those corners to the inside. I'm going to select this, and I might even apply a corner radius. So as I'm building out that icon, these guides are going to help me get consistency across the designs. Now, there are also these icon grids. This is one that I've built out, and I often will scale it down. So this is a component. And so I'll scale it to fit in this space. I'm going to press the K key and scale this down. Oops, I got a lot of grids there. Let's press Shift G and hide those grids. So I'm going to scale this down. So this is like a little insert. Hopefully one day Figma will make this native. And so what this is a guide to help you understand how to arrange things for consistency. Because when you have icons that are going to be taller, you want them to be balanced with icons that may be wider. So here, as I build out this icon, I might start thinking about thickness. I might start thinking about where this lands. So I can see that this inside rectangle might be the bounds for it. Whereas if I'm working on maybe another icon that may be taller, I might extend that height and move this down to better understand and to better service it for those purposes. So if I have like an icon that may be a little bit taller, this then helps guide how I may arrange it. The circle helps give me a guide for concentric angles as well. So this is also going to help you sort of represent some of the corner areas that you're working with. And let's say here, what I may want to do is to, oops, don't want to pull up my emojis. Here, what I may begin to do is to even use the pen tool. So like, let's say I want to build my stroke weight is super thick. Let's bring that back down to 1. There we go. So here I can begin to use the pen tool to further like drive, what I may be making and be more prescriptive of where things may land. So here I might use that line and then this center point to make a send icon. And then now that I've generated this send icon by using those intersection points, I can then go into my strokes and apply the join. And so here I can even make a stroked out version. And then there's a nice little send icon. So if I was to look at that frame without that sort of background grid, right? It's like it's going to be much harder to judge where those points are going to land, but that grid then helps serve as a guide as you're building out your icons and helps bring in a bit more conformity because you want the icons to feel like a family throughout that design. So this right here, it's just made with like single lines drawn, and I usually just scale it for 24 pixel icons there. Cool. So 2 more things that I'm going to cover. I'm not going to concern myself with Figma Draw and effects. What I would recommend is take a look at Figma Draw. With Figma Draw, you can apply, fun brush strokes and different effects for icons. If you want to make them larger, if you want to give them more character, there's just different effects that you can apply to them as you're building them out. I could even swap fill and stroke, add a stroke on top of it, and let's apply, like a brush to it, and that way I can get like a more character or stylized icon. So I'm going to come back over here, components. Last month I gave a workshop on components, and we kind of talked about how they're arranged and how they're worked. So here I'm actually using a concept known as variants and component properties to build out this widget that I have here. So this is my widget. I'm going to show you how it works. So here, when I select this, I'm able to create these different various states that enable the mic and the icon. So we'll be posting this workshop shortly onto YouTube. So if you didn't come last month or you want to like review it, the concept is component properties and the other concept is variant components. But what I wanted to show you down here is that when you're building a component such as a button, you're going to have a component property that is going to be called a swap property. So here I have my left icon is set up. So right here, this is an icon that lives inside of this button. So we have that frame for that icon. I'll show you how I did that. So we have here just a frame. So this is 16 by 16. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to make a 16 by 16 icon. And for this purpose, I'm just going to make a circle. I'm going to duplicate it and bring that in. And we're going to subtract the circle from the circle. Okay, I'm going to select that. I'm going to call it record. I'm going to select that. I'm going to make that a component. I'm going to hide the background fill. And I'm going to take this icon and I'm going to put it over here in my set where I have other icons. So by putting it inside of this section, and I'm going to make sure that it's named correctly. So in here, we have that boolean object. I'm going to call that icon because all of these are made with a boolean union object called icon. So they're all named exactly the same way, and that's important, and I'll show you why. So I'm going to make that black. So now I have my record icon. My record icon is in my icons section. So section is Shift S, you draw to section, and that's going to be a method of organization in the file that's going to take place over here. So what I want to do is I'm going to select this right here, and I'm going to create what is known as an instance swap property. We're going to come here. We're going to add our instance swap property. We're going to call this our left icon, and we're going to set some preferred instances. And so the preferred instances can be ones that we want to be there. There's our record. So these are the ones that we want to show up as defaults. And I could just select all instances. Hey, that's great. So now they're all there. This already has the left icon property associated with it. So that means that when this is an instance, all I have to do is come over here and I can match it and swap it out with a different one. Even when I change the color, because we put them inside of that Boolean object, we can come here and then swap it with a different icon, and it's always going to match up. So that consistency is what's going to be important, and building up that library is going to save you a ton of time. So lastly, let's talk about export to SVG, and let's talk about the different ways that you can use this. All of these icons, when you go into one, you just right click and you can copy paste as SVG. So that SVG, if we were to go to, let's say, codepen.io, and I'm just going to start coding, and I just paste that into HTML, you're going to see our icon show right up. So there's our icon. So if I come over here, and let's make sure that this one, we have our union object. Yeah, there we go. And let me grab this one here. Just want to make sure that we set it up properly. I'm going to detach this instance just because I think this wasn't unioned. So we're going to take this, we're going to create a union object out of it, copy paste as SVG. Just want to show you this working properly. And there we go. We got a much better output. There it is. Now the icon is perfect. So that Boolean operation is going to make a big difference. So that SVG works. So now another way to think of using these icons is I can select it. I can go to dev mode. And in dev mode, this would be something that you share with your developer. It's going to have the SVG code for it right here. And you can just click on that button right there and it'll copy it. You could see the icon show up right here. You could even download the SVG. So SVG stands for Scalable Vector Graphic. It'll show you the colors associated for it. And now the way that I've been working with MCP is I've been able to just target, right here, when you have MCP enabled, you can just select any button, any object, and you can copy an example prompt, and then you could send that to an agent and ask it to pull that design, to pull that SVG. So I've even been doing like Mac OS development, and I've been able to just say, hey, grab this, override an SF icon, and use my code directly from Figma. So using that MCP is going to give you the ability to then transfer your specific designed icon immediately over. The things that I would highly recommend: make it into, use consistency, use those frames, make it as a component. In your component, once again, every single one of these components are wrapped as a union object. Oop, the chevron's wrong. That should be named icon. There we go. Glad I caught that one. So as long as they have that consistency in naming. So once again, the outside frame, that would be your icon name. So this would be your icon name. If you generate a, let's say I'm making a menu. So let's do that. Let's round out those corners. Round. And so if this were going to be your icon, we can center it. By the way, fun fact, if I tried to center this vertically, all of them are going to line up to the middle. If I want to center as a group, hold down the shift key when you come over to align. So hold down the shift key, align. If you don't do that and you just hit align, it's going to center it together. So hold down the shift key, it'll center it within a group inside of those frames. Now that we've set that up, we're going to come over here. We're going to create a union object. That union object's going to be here. We're going to double click that. I'm going to rename that to icon. And then here, if I want to make this as a reusable component, I'm going to generate that as a reusable component. I'm going to call this menu. And then what I can do is I'm going to organize this with the other ones. There's two ways to get your icon to kind of show up in an organized fashion. You can either place it inside of a named section. In this case, my section's name's icons, or when you name it, you can name it like icons/menu. So what this is going to do is actually then put that into that subfolder. So the way that you test this is by going to your assets panel, by going to create it in this file, and you'll see this icons folder. All of these are now grouped together. So when you publish them as a library, they're going to be in that subfolder. And when you go to create them as, like, let's say an instance property. So let's make a button, select that, press Shift A to wrap it in auto layout. I'm going to grab one of these to drop it in there as well. I'm going to select that frame. I'm going to give it a fill. I'm going to round out those corners. Let's remove the space in between to be about 2. And now if I make this a component, I want this to be a component prop. So I come over here, we're going to create that, left icon. The value is going to be record. We create that property. Now, for any instance, we can come over here and then we can pull up another one of our matching icons. And if we change the color of that here, when we select that button, it will still update that color. That wasn't the right size, but that is the right size. And that is the right size. And that is the right size. So once again, icons front to back. You can export as SVG, copy paste as SVG, you can use dev mode, and you can provide it as context for MCP if you are building with an agent. So that being said, I'd like to thank you all coming to the workshop today. And we are going to be, are there any questions? We have some questions. We have time for questions, Joanna. Awesome. So how to use dynamic corners. So yeah, just like the rounded corners, when you draw a rectangle, you can either double click, select that point, apply a corner radius right there. Or if it's on a shape, you'll see them there. You'll see the corner radius. You can apply them individually over there. Is there a way to get the handles to snap to each other so each side is identical? The handles to snap to each other. Yes. So here, if you want those handles to be identical, it's just a matter of going to mirror angle and length. We'll just go there. If you hold the shift key, it'll snap. So you're mentioning about the handle breaking and snapping. If you hit Command or Control plus Option, which is also Alt, so Control Alt, you can break that handle and move it exactly where you want it to be. If you hold down the Shift key, it'll snap. And that specific handle has an X and Y value that you can control yourself as well. So I can break that and control that as well. So just like this. Okay, let's see, what else do we have? Is there a built-in live XML CSS code panel that updates while you edit the vector? Yeah, so dev mode. So like as you're working, I mean, basically as you're working, you can always just copy paste as SVG and then drop that into a pen. Like it is effectively just working just like that. So as you're working, this is the code. If you were to grab like an SVG icon from the web, like the SVG code itself. So if I was to just take this code and copy it and paste it into Figma, it's just going to paste as the shape. So you can just paste in SVG code, like any logo, into Figma, and it'll just paste in as a shape. So what's the difference between union and flatten for icons? So union is the non-destructive operation. It isn't flattened. So if I were to take these three objects together and I make them as a union, it creates a union group. So these are all now grouped together that then have this like output. If I press Shift X, it'll It'll show me like the outline. Let's increase the weight. I'm going to put the outline to the outside. And so the objects inside still move around and are still editable. Okay. So even in here, I can still apply like rounded corners and I can build this out. Now, the difference between that and flatten, when you flatten it, you've accepted it. That's it. There's no more editing. So now that this has been flattened, these are the points. There's no more editing that individual shape anymore. That's it. That's what you got. Like that's effectively what you're working with. If there are benefits to leaving the union versus flattening into a single vector, the benefits to leaving it as a union is that it's still editable. You can go in, you can make tweaks. So at any point, I could still come in here and I can make tweaks on it. If I were to copy paste this as vector, I know we got to get going. If I were to copy this, paste this as SVG, I could paste this here and it'll still render out as SVG. It's pretty smart in how it handles that. Thank you all so much for joining today. Config is coming up. We're going to be dropping some really cool things. So that is going to be June 23rd through 25th. So 24th and 25th, head on over to config.figma.com. You can register virtually for free. It'll be 2 whole days of workshops, feature drops, and talks from amazing speakers. Brilliant. Thank you so much. And I hope you all have a fantastic weekend.